Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Lewis Hoffman. I'm co-editor-in-chief of the University Professors Press. University Professors Press is a small publishing company that was founded in 2012 that specializes in publishing books on existential, humanistic, and transpersonal psychology and creativity studies. It's a publishing company that was developed by experienced professors and authors for scholars and authors. One of the series that we have with University Professors Press is the Poetry, Healing, and Growth series. The book that we'll be discussing tonight, A 21st Century Plague, is the 12th book in the Poetry, Healing, and Growth series. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to start off with an interview with the editor of the book, Elayne Clift. And after this, we're going to have a poetry reading where we have a number of people who have contributed to the book that will read their poem. After each poem, we'll give a 5 to 10 second pause to allow for the poems to kind of sink in and connect with the emotions. After this, we'll have a brief time for discussion and response to questions. If you're watching this on Facebook Live and you have questions for Elayne or for any of the poets that we'll be reading tonight, please feel free to type them in on Facebook, and when we get to the end, we will try and get to your question. So before we get started with the interview, I'm going to read a bio of our editor, Elayne Clift. An award-winning writer and journalist, Elayne Clift's work has appeared in the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, the Christian Science Monitor, the Chronicle of Higher Education, Salon.com, and numerous international magazines, periodicals, and anthologies. She is a regular columnist for 3 New England newspapers and a reviewer for the New York Journal of Books. She is the author of 2 memoirs, 2 books of poetry, 3 short story collections, 3 essay collections, a travel memoir, and editor of 3 edited anthologies. Her poem, I Listen and My Heart is Breaking, was set to music and performed by the world-renowned a cappella group Sweet Honey in The Rock. She conducts writing workshops at venues ranging from conferences, local libraries, and arts programs to the noted destination spa Rancho La Puerto in Tecate, Mexico. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, Elayne.
Thank you.
All right, maybe you can share with us what inspired you to take on this project, and when was it in the timeline of our COVID pandemic that the inspiration for this really took hold?
So I was in Florida visiting my son when the really alarming news in March of 2020, the alarm bells were really ringing about COVID, and I actually returned early under pressure from my children. So I hadn't quite envisioned this at that point, but of course, COVID was becoming something really that we all had to be quite serious about and think about changing our behavior. The book idea actually came to me during the spring. I remember in May, I was sitting on my sun porch, and we were at that point, everybody was kind of under isolation. And I was sitting on my sun porch here. I live in Vermont, where it's very beautiful and we have lovely gardens and stuff. And I was feeling actually very peaceful with this isolation. And I thought to myself, I wrote a poem. I wrote the first of the trilogy of poems that are in the book, in which I was sort of saying, well, this isn't really so bad. It's calm, it's peaceful, it's beautiful. It's time to think, to read, whatever. And that's when I really did come up with the idea, because it struck me that all of us were going to have different experiences, but also collective experiences, that this was going to be a long haul and a somewhat traumatic and, hopefully not fatal for us event, and that we were going to have to really make adjustments. So I really started thinking about it around May of 2020. And so I put out a call in Poets and Writers magazine and an open call, and also on Facebook, and told friends and my listserv and stuff. And I was pretty astounded at how quickly I started to get amazing poetry. I got over 100 submissions, of which 70 are in the book.
You got started on this pretty early in the pandemic then.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that motivated me was I started to think about how we all know something about the 1918 pandemic, and it's sort of, it's a piece of our history. And I thought, in addition to the idea of validating people's feelings and experiences and sharing them to help other people get through it, I really did think, and I do think, that this book offers a window into the history of our time and our pandemic. So I hope that, I'm not the only one who's done a pandemic poetry anthology, by the way. There's a few others, but I do think the writing in this book is extraordinary, and I do hope that it will serve as a window into this experience for our children and grandchildren.
Yeah, it is one of the beautiful things about poetry is that it can capture history, but an aspect of history that's often ignored in the history books. So more the emotional and the struggle of it a little bit more. You wrote a trilogy of poems that were written over the course of that time. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that experience was like and what made that meaningful to you?
Yeah, so I'm just going to open the book to those pages and sort of draw a line or two from some of those poems. So in May of 2020, as I said, when I started to think about this, and I was sitting on my porch and feeling that, there's a line in the ending of that poem says, but that's called Pandemic Pleasures. And the end of the poem says, but together, having made it through, we will live to celebrate another spring, strong, resilient, and grateful too. Mm-hmm. So that was my mindset at the beginning. The mm-hmm. second poem in the trilogy is called Pandemic Liberation, and it was written in July of 2020. And in that one, I was being a bit cheeky and talking about all the things we were able to give up that we didn't really want to live with anymore, particularly those of us of a certain age. So I won't read the whole poem, but the middle verse of 3 says, no worries about my hair or how I look, or for that matter, what I cook. No deadline to meet, I'm happy to say, except for an occasional library book. Although I do confess some compensation for a class or oration would certainly be cause for celebration. And I just have to tell you, part of the beginning of the poem is no makeup, no manicures or matching clothes, although I do miss the occasional massage, no big girl shoes or iron shirts or bothersome bras. And it goes on from there. So I was still, coping well, and I was still just kind of trying to be a little playful in these dire times. The final poem, though, is very significant because it's written in September of 2020. And by that time, I'm really feeling the pain of this thing. And I know that other people are feeling the pain of the isolation and not seeing, people they love and so forth. And so again, I'm not going to read the whole of the 2-verse poem, but I will just read the last one. Entering crisis mode, tempers flared, tears flowed. Trips for groceries became a call for celebration. Haircuts a miraculous event. Release from house arrest. Precious family and friends risked distant contact at outdoor lunch. We Zoomed, FaceTimed, Skyped, vowing to carry on in COVID solitude, awaiting the darkness of winter. So that progression, I hope, captures the sort of progression that one way or another we sort of all went through and maybe still going through.
One of the things I appreciate about it too is that it points to the paradoxical aspects, which poetry can do such a beautiful job of that. There were some things that were enjoyable for some people about COVID, even though that doesn't mean they wanted this to happen. But it captures both some of the benefits and the sorrows of how it changed over time. Mm. One of the things that I've heard from some people that have started reading the book or read the book is that as they have read through the book, they feel less alone. They're able to recognize that others have had some of the same struggles. Did that have any connection with why you wrote this book or put this book together?
Yeah, I think my major in that sort of genre of what you're talking about, or that essence of what you're talking about, I think for me, the biggest thing was to validate people's feelings and to bring them comfort, because they were not alone, but they may have felt very alone. And, prior to this, I did an anthology, open call anthology called Take Care, Tales, Tips, and Love from women caregivers. And it was the same thing with that book. I wanted women who were caregiving, which is 99.9% women, I wanted them to feel supported and validated and comforted by hearing from other women's experiences. And it's not a depressing book at all. It's a very encouraging book. So I kind of had that same mindset when I did this.
Mhm. Yeah. You've mentioned a few of the things that really make this project meaningful for you and the purposes of it. But were there any other purposes that you saw to this book as you were compiling it?
I guess you could say it kept me busy during the COVID.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Once you get, one of a famous writer, I forget who it was, it might have been Ann Tyler's, once said, if I didn't keep getting all these ideas, I wouldn't have to be a writer. So once I got the idea, I couldn't let it go. And it really did help to keep me very busy during the last year.
The book itself was a coping mechanism in a way of the struggles.
Well, certainly writing for me, and I'm sure for all of us is a mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've compiled 4 anthologies now. What do you see as some of the challenges and blessings of compiling these anthologies?
Well, first of all, let me say I never did an anthology that had 53 people, 53 cats to round up. So rounding up cats, whether it's 13 or 53, that's always one of the big challenges. In this case, being an academic press was challenging because of the fact that, the reprint permissions and the contributor forms all had to be done correctly and stuff like that. So the mechanics of doing this book were quite challenging as compared to the other ones I've done. But any anthology is really challenging. And in all cases, when I've done one, I'm basically choosing the pieces that go in there based on a couple of things. First of all, I especially, I would say in all of them, but in this one especially, I wanted to think about, first of all, the quality of the poetry. I wanted to think about the structure of the book in terms of what would, that there would be this kind of, like I tried to do a time frame, there would be this sort of sense of time in the poems. I also wanted geographic diversity, and I wanted diversity of experience and writers' experiences. So for example, there is an Irish Franciscan brother who's in this, and there's also an incarcerated man who is a writer and a poet who I came to know through someone else. I just wanted all these different voices. And I also wanted a gender balance because the majority of the poets in the book are women, but there are, of course, quite a number of men. The one thing I didn't put in the call, and specifically, and I wish I had, was to make sure that I had overtly invited people of color. And I regret that I didn't make that overt because I have no way of knowing really until I meet you all if I have people of color in the book. And I should have made that a more prominent invitation. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of and then some of the challenges generically of doing an anthology, of course, are finding doing the whole, pitch to get the book published and finding a publisher that really one feels meets the needs and the quality of the book. And then, of course, marketing the book really falls. Nobody loves your kid the way you do. So you have to really sell your own book. So those are some of the challenges.
Yeah. It's, there's this myth that poetry is dead. It's not dead, but it is hard to sell for sure these days. That's definitely a challenge. Was there a particular process you went about in reviewing the poems and selecting poems?
Not really. I read them as soon as they came in, and I reread them several times when I was ready to make selections. I knew some of them right away were in, and I knew some of them right away were not in because of the quality of the writing. I wanted it to be as outstanding as it has turned out to be. So, so certainly, I read them several times and put aside the obvious no's and put aside the yeses. I had a maybe pile, and then I did start looking at the structure of the book, like which ones were going to fit, not in a hard sequence of timing, but in a kind of complementary way. And also, I didn't want them all to be heavy. I wanted them to. Some of them in the book are quite humorous and they're poignant, and there's a variety of tone and voice that I was looking for as well. Yeah.
I'm curious what it was like for you emotionally as you were going through these poems, at least what you're willing to share of that.
Well, one or two of them did bring tears to my eyes, maybe more than one or two. I was deeply impressed by the quality of the poems, and I was very grateful that people had sent them in and wanted to be part of this book. I just felt the whole time, I felt kind of proud of doing this book and excited about what I think the book brings to the COVID history and COVID experience. So it wasn't, it was rewarding and pleasant experience to read the poems and make the choices. I didn't have to struggle too hard with that.
Yeah. This might be a challenging question, but if you were to have sent the call for poems at maybe a later time, and this last winter was a pretty dark winter with it, and we're getting them submitted in October, November, December, do you think you would have had a different variety of poems coming in, or different things in your mind in selecting them?
I don't know. It's possible that would have happened, but that's part of the reason that I put out the call as early as I did. And also it had a long deadline date.
Okay. Okay.
I moved it up a little bit because I didn't want the book to get stale, and I knew it was going to take time to get it published. So, so I think it's very good that I started when I did, and that it had a really reasonable deadline date.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a real challenge with a book like this, is to have a deadline where you can be timely and get it out, but also to get that breadth of experience.
Right.
Is there anything else you would like to share just about the book and your experience with it before we move on to the poetry reading?
Not really. I just again want to underscore my gratitude to the poets and the wonderful writing they've done, and for being part of the book, and of course my gratitude to University Professors Press, which chose to publish it. I love that it's in your series called About Growth and Healing. And actually, I've really used that as a way to promote the book, because I think it widens the audience. Because when I do try to set up readings or events, which 99% are virtual at this point, but I'm hoping in early September, October, I'll have some live ones, because after that, the book isn't new after about 6 months. So I'm trying to get some live ones for the fall. But I forget what my train of thought was going to be, but just being very mindful the whole time about it, and trying to make good decisions with respect to timing and choice and so forth. But I'm grateful for the fact that it's between covers, and people that are reading it are responding very positively. It does generate that few virtuals, or at least conversations that I've had with people about it. It really does generate a lot of really meaningful conversation. I'll just give you one quick example. I have a sort of a women's group that evolved out of a class. I teach classes at a university, a college-related adult education program, writing workshops, and many of the people who take my class have taken many of my classes before. So there was a group of 9 of us out of that, all women, who really bonded and did Zoom meetings, I guess I would say, or get-togethers during COVID once a month. And one of those, it was very compelling, because we're all of a certain age. These are, we're wise elders. And one of the women in the group has ALS and is amazing. She's amazingly inspiring. She's been living with it for over 20 years. And we began to talk about, and one of them had just lost her son. And we began to talk about the things that we want to change in our lives as a result of this, or the things we want to jettison, or that we want to value more, how we want to spend our time. And it led to a discussion of our feelings about getting older and death and dying. And so that really woke me up to the potential for people to really process that kind of stuff. And as a result of that, and so I do try to make it known when I'm pitching the book for an event, that this isn't just a bunch of poems. This is a very meaningful collection of poems that allows us to confront some of those taboo issues. And as a result of that, I am now offering in the fall a class exactly around that, not so much based on the book, but on the experience of the COVID thing, where people in our age group can come together in a safe and validating, comforting space in which to think about, discuss, and write about their own aging process, or the changes that this COVID thing has wrought in all of our lives. And so I'm very, very much looking forward to that. And really, I think it's going to be a pretty profound experience. Yeah. And it will involve actually one guest speaker, a pastoral counselor, one is a retired psychiatrist, and I'll have one other person I haven't identified. So it's a very meaningful offshoot of the book, but particularly my thinking about the book and my experience of reading all the work.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful course. That quite powerful to be able to create a course that helps students really think through a lot of these issues effectively.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many taboo issues around aging and death and dying, and it's really a shame because we all have to do it. We might as well think about it and talk about it.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you so much for submitting to University Professors Press and for all the work that you did. It is if you've never edited a volume of poetry, it is a tremendous amount of work and not all of it fun, for sure. So we appreciate all the work that you've put in to help this book be birthed. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Elayne, to guide through the poetry reading. And then at the end, we'll come back and have a discussion. And for those on Facebook, again, I would just mention if you have any questions from the interview or along the way, feel free to type those in on Facebook Live. We'll have a little bit of a discussion after the poetry reading. So it's all yours.
Thank you, Louis. Okay, so our first reader, who happens to have the first poem in the book because it does provide a somewhat a historical context to what follows, is Rai de Honore. She lives in Vermont and is, I'm happy to say, a friend of mine. She has a PhD in modern languages and has taught several languages, English, French, and Spanish, as well as other subjects. And she's a really, really interesting person because she's a historian she's an expert in a period of history in France that is about the culture of a medieval society or medieval part of France. And she composes and sings the troubadour style songs and gives lectures on the culture of medieval, am I saying it right, Occitania.
Occitania, yes.
Yeah, so she's going to read the first poem.
Thank you, Elayne. Plagues. The Black Death it was called, the bubonic plague, as nasty a death as can be. From India, Persia, and Africa, it sailed across the sea on the back of rats, so quickly passed by the bite of an infected flea. The lymph nodes swelled, the pustules grew, the disease on a rapid spree. When the enemy came and flew under the doors, people quickly shuttered their stores, remaining fearful within. They shook and quaked to contemplate. It had been caused by mortal sin. For 30 days, no ships appeared, 40 for quarantine. Now that a new plague has arrived, no one can be sure of their fate. An invisible virus spreading itself as it learned to quickly mutate. Tests were few, cures obscure, vaccine for many too late. We masked ourselves, stayed indoors, prepared for a very long wait. Plagues, plagues, there have always been plagues, not easy to combat, yet we endure, and pray no more, as so many have done before.
Thank you, Ryan. The next reader is Karen Schubert from Ohio. She is the author of The Compost Reader, published by Accents Publishing, and 5 chapbooks. I'm not going to name them all in the interest of time, but her poetry and creative nonfiction appears in numerous publications, and her awards include an Ohio Arts Council Individual Excellence Award. She's also the director of Lit Youngstown in Ohio.
Thank you so much, Elayne. I'm honored to be included. We have Lit Youngstown has a book discussion, and in the year before we were our current plague, we were reading about climate change and the crash of biodiversity and different kinds of books. And so I was thinking about the collapse of the grid or other kinds of catastrophes like that. And this pandemic was really different from that, where the infrastructure was still in place, but we couldn't go out into it. So I called my poem, Not the Apocalypse I Was Expecting. COVID-19's a sniper. We hide our faces, X the calendars, talk in boxes, miss the music. We go missing. The trustee who said, people like you want us all on bicycles. The artist who drew her feet, cats, eggplants, picked off Monday. The new grandpa. The brother lives with braided lungs, hikes to the kitchen, rests. In the night, Twitter tells us the president is alive. We spend months in pajama pants, cancel Halloween, eat the chocolate. The children, the children. We drink whiskey at home. We vector, die without touching, or look at morning like we've never seen it before.
Beautiful, Karen. Beautiful. Thank you. Next is Thomas Smith, who teaches at the Loft Literary Center in Minneapolis. His poetry collection, Storm Island, appeared in 2020, and he has also published a prose book called Poetry on the Side of Nature, Writing the Nature Poem as an Act of Survival.
Thank you. That book is due out probably this fall from Folded Word Press in New Hampshire. I'm going to read a poem called The Long Summer. And I've felt for a while that these times have favored the introvert, especially the creative introvert. If we were not personally ill and we didn't have anyone close to us who was ill or died, it wasn't so bad. My wife had just had a serious stroke and was in December of 2019, and it was out of the house in hospital and in rehab for 3 months. So she came back about 2 weeks into the lockdown in March. So we actually had a wonderful recovery time together and spent many days really enjoying our lives together again. So to me, the COVID didn't look so bad personally. I know the toll it took on others though, and I also think that maybe we all got a little feral over the last year or two, and now we're having to return from that. So I know that it took a toll on all of us, even if we were creative introverts. This poem is called The Long Summer. 19th of June. It's going to be a long summer. All of our seasonal celebrations canceled or gone virtual, homebound. The question becomes what to do with the space we confront when we turn away from our devices. Does our time explode or implode? There are abysses in the hours we take great pains to avoid, whole Mariana trenches of memory and apprehension that can be worked around only by staying insanely busy. For some, this way indeed lies madness, spreading outward from the top like venom from a snake bite. But others, it's likely, may look back on this as the summer that stretched beyond the parentheses of Memorial Day and Labor Day to become a world unto itself in which we rediscovered and perhaps were able to keep for a while the riches of expanse and dreaming we'd so often and yearningly recalled but failed to grasp, glimpsed them as we might in the clouded playroom mirror of childhood. Thank you.
Can I just say that it was one thing beautiful to read the poems, but to hear them in the writer's voice is absolutely fabulous. So Stephanie Shaffron is next. She's from Massachusetts and has published poetry and prose in numerous journals and anthologies. Her chapbook, Awakening, appeared last year as the coronavirus began changing our lives forever.
Thank you, Elayne. There are so many people to thank for this evening's book release, beginning with its editor, Elayne Clift. Her vision, belief, and impressive perseverance in this project are responsible for its successful publication. I'd also like to thank the University Professors Press, who recognized the worth of this anthology as both a creative and historic testament to the personal and universal trauma of COVID-19. Without you, we wouldn't be here celebrating tonight. And to my fellow contributors, Now part of my beloved writing community, I look forward to meeting many of you in person at future readings. I have often found inspiration in Richard Blanco's poetry. His poem Story, published in the Atlantic Journal in April 2020, came to my attention during a brief period of personal pandemic panic. As with any virus, panic is contagious. The poem represents my efforts to manage this temporary dread. After Story by Richard Blanco. Epigraph. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. Naomi Shihab Nye. Say the sore throat nagging at you last night simply resulted from chasing your grandson around his dusty driveway for 2 hours yesterday morning. Say your recently neutered taste buds just collapsed under the weight of your anxiety and zinc-laden tongue after sucking on lozenges every 2 hours. Say my vice-like headache in tandem with your departure for the clinic's testing tent was nothing more than a psychosomatic duet. Say the stultifying air of breezes trapped behind curtains pulled tight accounted for my sweat-soaked forehead upon awakening. Say the zigzag pattern of my symptoms meant that only the lightest of viral loads rummaged through my blood vessels before collapsing in exhaustion and defeat. Say tomorrow morning's first sip of juice tickles your taste buds with its citrus zing. Say by Sunday we find ourselves pedaling easily up the hill by the jetty where I learned to swim as a girl. Say this double-crossing rehearsal in dread leaves us sighing with relief. Then, what will become of your needling dread? Lungs gone awry, breath a gasping prisoner to a ventilator? Then, instead of sniping by habit first thing in the morning, will I remember to adhere to the note I've affixed on the bathroom mirror, be nice? Then, will the echo of that squabble I instigated stop ringing so loudly in my ears? Then, your hand squeezing mine, might we wade step by step into the swirling waters of intimacy? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next is Carol Barrett, who lives in Oregon. She coordinates the Creative Writing Certificate Program at Union Institute and University. And her books include Calling in the Bones, which won the Snyder Prize from Ashland Poetry Press, and Pansies, which was a finalist for the 2020 Oregon Book Awards. She's also a former NEA fellow in poetry.
Thank you, Elayne, and fellow and sister writers. It's delightful to share work with you and re-experience what we've been through and to find hope in the images. That swirling waters of intimacy, Stephanie, was just fabulous. The end of that poem, loved it. My poem is called Deer Mouse, and it actually starts describing a different virus. The hantavirus claimed 637 lives, aged 6 to 83, by 2013. And that's a statement put out by the CDC. Mass outbreaks are rare, confined to environmental anomalies, periodic bamboo flowering, increased rainfall. The mice don't die, just those they brush against in sleep. If you sweep out a nest, the virus rides airborne, seizes your throat. In California, a friend looks out at the Inyo Mountains, gurgling snowmelt stream. He cleans out his cabin, sloshes buckets of bleach on table and chairs, contaminated floors and cupboards. Already dust from Owens Lake, toxic enough. Alkaline salts sting his face in wind. Near every bedstead, he sets traps, window, crack in floor, wonders how he'll do 5 weeks hence. Onset, resembling flu. And now another pretender hijacks the news. Coronavirus plays hide and seek. No mouse to blame, no spring to set. A simple sneeze can do you in. A laugh, a shout, a grunt. Before, we treated aching limbs with midday rest, called fever down with blue raspberry ice from Dairy Queen, now closed. We sleep tossing coins, tell friends how far we've fallen through psyche's trap door, how dry the masked desert, somber dance ahead, leave cabins to mice, not men. Thank you.
Aren't these just wonderful? Every time I read them or hear them, I just think, God, they're so good. So thanks, Carol. Brian Daldorf next, teaches at the University of Kansas and Douglas County Jail. He edits Coal City Review, and his most recent book of poetry is called Blue Notes, and it was published in 2019 by Dionysia Press, and he lives in Kansas.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm in Lawrence, Kansas, and thanks to all of you for being here. I just feel honored to be a part of this community. And thanks to you, Elayne, for making this happen and for finding, I think, the right press. I think you found just the right place for this book, and that's great. As an editor myself, I know the challenges of doing this, and especially an anthology where you're working with a lot of people and trying to get it right. And the book looks great. And I'm also glad that you made it timely. It's out at the right time when we're still thinking about all of these things. And I think that makes it even more important. I have 3 short poems, so I'll read all 3. The first poem is called Love in the Time of Plague, which the title was from Marquez' Love in the Time of Cholera. And I think at a time of death and illness and the struggle that we all went through in the last year, I think we all really wanted to live as well. And that's what this poem is about. Love in the Time of Plague. They sit on the beach together in swimsuits, dark glasses, sun hats. They've been told not to do this, to keep distance, to wear protective clothing. But the sun's shining, they have beer, cigarettes, and music. The time is right for dancing in the street. Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. Dance, dance while you still have time. If you're sick tomorrow, if you get the fever, if your last days are in a hospital bed, then at least you lived, you loved, you were alive, gloriously alive. And then 2 short poems. The first one, social distancing. How many times did we hear that phrase over the last year? Social distancing. Outside your house, I blow kisses, whisked away by the cold wind. And then the third poem called After the Pandemic, which was written during the pandemic, but I was thinking about what it would be like afterwards when we finally got there. After the pandemic. After the pandemic, we shuffle out from our dark houses, blinking into sunlight. We walk to the park and sit on benches, watch children try to remember how to play. Thank you.
Great, Brian, thanks.
Thank you.
So the next reader is Sandra Larson, and I really, really owe her a debt of gratitude, because Sandra has organized, there apparently are about 5, I think, is it, poets in the in Minnesota, and Sandra has pulled them all together, and they're going to be doing a reading in Minneapolis, I believe, sometime coming up.
We're hoping this fall.
Good. Am I right? Is it 5?
The 6th.
6. Bravo.
Tom, we're counting Thomas, who actually lives across the St. Croix River in Wisconsin, as a Minnesotan. So that's how we get to 6.
That's just so great. That's so great. Will that be, do you know where that's going to be yet?
No, I'm still talking to different bookstores. They're trying to do a bookstore, and some of them are just, not quite sure when they're going to get the ability to do this again, but there's interest in doing it. So I'm encouraged by that.
I hope that wherever you do it, that it can be recorded and that so we can see it.
I hope so. That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay. So you're the next reader.
Okay. I just want to thank you, Elayne, for really putting this together. I just can't imagine kind of getting this, herding everyone into this. And I also think it's great to have artifacts, from the art from some times of trauma like this. And this is one of them. So I think to be inspired by what's happened during these sort of fateful times. My poem was written early on in this whole lockdown. I'm trying to remember exactly. I'm not sure. I think it was about April. And you'll be able to tell from the references that obviously it was early on. But I really do want to point out that regardless, even after I got through this, we all gotten through this, I still feel so blessed and so privileged. And even though traumatized in my own way, I haven't gotten sick, I haven't lost a job or loved one or my home. So I do honor all the true survivors that really made it through this time, and the first responders and the essential workers. And then to think about over 600,000 dead. I mean, it's just, incredible. So I'm sort of mindful of that because I think my poem is shows how I was stirred up, but it doesn't have that trauma that we know so many went through. So this is called Space. During this lockdown, I walk from room to room in my condo, worried about whether I have enough room. All this space now encompasses 7 continents, along with Italy and maybe Spain. The United States takes every inch of my living room and dining room. Canada must be on the porch. England is surely in my bedroom, and Boris Johnson recovering from the coronavirus in the guest room. I don't know where I'm going to put the 30,000 plus dead, as my closets are filled with coats to stave off the winter chill. And now there are more than 500,000 who have been touched by this deadly virus. Its little prickly flower hovering right outside my condo unit door. My anxiety rises as more people are getting sick and dying, and now so many are losing their jobs. My kitchen being of modest size, I certainly wouldn't have enough to feed them. I'm not even going to think about my bedrooms, how many other desperate people could rest their heads here. My car sits idle in my underground garage. I don't go out for groceries, thanks to a son who delivers. But worst of all, like some magnetic force, I'm drawn to turn on the TV, only to see and hear from a man who should have been quarantined from any form of public service. I haven't had a wine or dined with friends or families, seen a movie or laughed, thinking about, hey, my world is fine. Maybe I can clear all this up if I just turn off the TV. Ah, now then, where is reality?
Wonderful. And good. I'm glad to see that Jim is back. Okay, so and actually it's very timely because it's his turn to read his poem. So I know his name is Jim, but he goes by J. Cates. He's a poet and literary translator who lives in New Hampshire.
I was pleased to discover this evening that Karen Schuster and I share a publisher. We have the same publisher in Accents Publishing in Lexington, Kentucky. I have another book coming out with them in next year, so it's kind of pleasant to meet you. The epigraph for my poem is taken from the Iliad, well-known selection from it. As is the generation of leaves, so is that of humanity. The wind scatters the leaves on the ground, but the live timber burgeons with leaves again in the season of spring returning. So one generation of men will grow while another dies. Tomorrow was yesterday. Like drifted memories, dead leaves I thought I'd raked away last fall have come back and risen by the wind after the springtime thaw, are all over the yard. I will rake again, finite recurring work to keep me sane. Like dead leaves gathered in the lee of rock and rhododendron, photos accumulate in the dining room, where I try sorting and dating them in the weird hiatus that marks time. Clocks have stopped, duties in abeyance, tenses dropped. Things will never be the same. Things are the same as always. That movie, you saw it too, how we must rehearse and rehearse every act with love until we break the spell. It will not happen today. It happened yesterday, hoping it will happen tomorrow, happen again the day after tomorrow. April, March, then May. Each photograph I scan and put away in a labeled file is different. Every leaf the wind has blown writes the same obituary of its own.
Great, great, thank you. So we have 4 more poets, and the next one is Bert Rashbone from Colorado. He has published in literary and poetic journals, including Contemporary Literary Horizons in Bucharest. His latest book is Of the Carousel, 2019, The Poets Press, and his work has been anthologized, and his books include A Century of Love, Becoming an American, and Tears for My Mother. He also thinks that he may have had COVID in spring of 2020.
Thank you, Elayne. Thank you for doing this beautiful book, and the University Professors Press for publishing it. It's a very wonderful accomplishment, the book, and I'm honored to be in this cohort of poets. Yes, I was sick in the early days of COVID, when there really were no tests available other than for healthcare workers. I was told not to come into the hospital unless I was literally deathly ill, and never got that bad. But because of how little they knew and how bad the news was increasingly getting in March and April and May and June, I was sick from the end of March to the middle of April. I became extremely isolated in my household. Food was left for me to eat, and there was nobody around when I did that. I was in a room by myself, in a very weakened state. And so I thought that one of the ways I could not only keep sane, but keep going in a way was by writing poetry. It's often through my life been a life raft, a life preserver, an oxygen tank, a cure in some way. So I wrote a series of poems while I was sick, and as the world started closing down and closing in, nobody was going to stores. Whenever I would hear a car go by, I would think, where is this person going? What do they need so badly that they're going somewhere? I had a teacher once named Dennis Brutus, a fabulous poet from South Africa, who actually was in the cell next to Nelson Mandela for about 20 years of his incarceration. And one of the things he said once was, if you know how to look, there are poems everywhere around you, just waiting to be written. So in one of my daily feeds, you'll see this when you go to open Facebook Pocket will have all these little articles you might click on, and they'll have 3 or 4 words from the article. So in one of these pages I looked at, there was an article about this COVID fatigue and everyone's increasing isolation. And the first words of the article were, "You're exhausted because of." And I read those 4 words and I thought, well, there's my next poem. That's the title. So you're exhausted because of the simplest things. Do I really need celery? How much dog food is left? Is that a dry cough, or do I just need a glass of water? Why is this silence so loud? Is this finally the 21st century? The nostalgia for a crowded room, so many conversations at once, intersecting laughter. How's it going? No longer the simple question, but instead, how are your people? Who's on a ventilator? No more traffic jams, long lines, 45-minute wait for a table, washing our hands like Lady Macbeth. No audience erupting in applause in a full auditorium. Clear skies in China, opera on balconies in Italy, mountain lions on city streets, silent factories, nitrile gloves to open mail. No grand finale shouts of bravo, standing and shouting for an encore, staring out the window at empty streets, having the nerve to flatten the curve, watching incompetence rise all the way to the top. Shuttered shops, not in ghost towns, but populated cities. However we return, we can never go back to before. Whenever we land, only gravity will not have changed.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bert. I love that one. Okay, Charlotte Friedman next from New Jersey. I'm born and bred in New Jersey. And I'm sorry to say that I always thought it was a great place to be from, except for the beach. But anyway, I was in a small town in the south part of the state. Charlotte Friedman teaches narrative medicine at Barnard College. Her poetry has been published in Connecticut River Review and other places, many other places. And her book, The Girls' Pages, was published by Hyperion.
Thank you, Elayne, and it's so nice to be here tonight. And thank you, Elayne, for your vision and certainly persistence. And thanks to University Professors Press. And it just feels great to be here in this community tonight. As you heard in my bio, I've worked with many clinicians and medical students, and I know this collection will be valuable to them, particularly maybe, and to people like me who work with them. So this is a poem written a couple months into the pandemic, and like many introverts, maybe it's the actually strangers that I missed, and the sort of physical proximity of strangers. So this is after months missing the crowded subway. I want to go back to the crush close push press of unfamiliar bodies, sweat stink and soft punch of day-old powdery perfume, scent of strawberry shampoo from someone's still wet hair. I want the lurch, lean, sharp stop, oh sorry, quick slide slip of hands making room on a metal pole for one more. Would that I could feel a stranger's lycra thigh against me in an orange plastic seat. Oh yes, I'd praise exploding gems on a screen, small victories seen over a shoulder, and wouldn't even flinch from an unlikely pinch. Let my eyes roam over a muscled bicep, inked blue, mute red serpent, disappearing under the sleeve of a black tee. I'd stargaze at nails bejeweled in tropical brilliance, then lose myself to the pink shell of a girl's ear, a nape's shadowy curve. I'll bypass my stop.
So Charlotte, I just have to mention quickly that I think it was Sunday's New York Times, maybe yesterday, there was actually an essay about this, specifically about subways.
I
don't
did
know
see
if
that,
you-
yeah.
Yeah. And I also just want to mention quickly that of the 3 people who endorsed the book on a back cover blurb, I mean, they were wonderful. I just mentioned that Courtney Davis, some of you may know, she is a very well-respected and well-known nurse poet. She did a beautiful one, and a local psychologist who I know who's wonderful. But the third one was, I'm mentioning this because of the connection to narrative medicine. I don't know if any of you are aware of Danielle Ofri, but she is a brilliant physician writer. She's really right up there with Atul Gawande, very well published, and a wonderful physician at Bellevue Hospital, and started the Bellevue Literary Review. She also wrote a fantastic review, back blurb for the book, which I was just so grateful for. And I'm also very thrilled because Marge Piercy has 2 poems in the book, 2 of 4. I took 2 of them. So that was good. So next is Maura Trachtenberg. She is from New York, a poet and fiction writer, as well as a visual artist. Her poetry has been published in numerous journals and publications. Her work has been showcased in Writing the Walls at Hudson Valley, MoCA. And she has performed at the Emotive Fruition Theater Collaborative in New York City.
Thank you, Elayne. Elayne, kudos for your ability to pull this all together during the pandemic. It's a testament to your willpower, and you made it seem so smooth. So thank you so much. And thank you to the University Professors Press for giving all of our voices a home. And I'm really feeling honored to be among this group of poets, and especially to know that so many others out there were just processing this craziness and doing that by writing. The poem that I chose to read tonight reflects on the new landscape that was created by the pandemic. In the area that I live in, there are these beautiful natural preserves in Westchester County. And I used to be among the few who would wander. And as soon as the pandemic hit, well, one of the only things we could do was hike. And so instead of 2 cars, there were 50 cars. So I'd like to take you to that moment back in the first spring of the pandemic. The new bucolic. A couple clad in surgical masks painted little boy blue, set against a grassy, sheepless expanse of dun, still dreaming of green, bounded by split rails, tumbled stones, lichen laced, and an invisible line stretched 2 yards between he and she. No hands held, back and forth, unpetted. The shrubs blare yellow and red alerts. The trees, yet hard and bare and bleak. We watch them skirt the edges of others' safe spaces, call the dog close. We balance between chill and warmth, adjust layers of fleece on and off again, there being no zone of comfort in this too cool, hard scrabble spring. Thank you.
Great, great. So our final poet for the evening, last but not least at all, is Dan Williams, who has been widely anthologized and who was nominated for a Pushcart Prize in Poetry. And here's the really interesting thing about him. Several of his poems are in the time capsule at Yosemite, and he lives in California.
Thank you very much, Elayne. It's wonderful to be here amongst this group. Truly great poems during a truly trying time in human history and American history. And I want to thank you, especially. I know that you and I went back and forth in the emails, and we went through quite a bit of tribulation. It was almost like giving birth, it seemed, to get the book published. But I want to thank you for all that you have done and in this venue and creating this wonderful product. Just briefly about myself, I'm a member of the Poets West organization, Poets and Writers, and the Ina Coolbrith Circle. I've had recent work published in the Robinson Jeffers Storehouse newsletter, the Great American Poetry Show, Yosemite Poets, The Voices of This Place, Yosemite, The Wonder of It All, Christian Science Monitor, The Muse, and The Gathering 15 are some of the recent ones. We in Yosemite, we have had our cases of COVID. Fortunately, nobody that I'm aware of has passed away. The main vector of the disease was the Central Valley of California. And those people who did get the disease, it turned out, had visited friends or family there. For a generation of people who are used to absolute and complete freedom, this has been quite a tribulation to have to go through this. And for those of us who didn't get the disease, it's simply the anxiety we have for other human beings and for ourselves and for our friends, the people in our circle, that they may be infected in some way, or that you may give it to them in some way, or that you may get it and have to go to a hospital and never see them again before you pass away. So this has been truly a terrible, terrible pandemic. And one of the things I'd like to say first of all is, if you look at the contributors list in the book, my name doesn't appear there. If you would just write my name in that contributors list, if you would, that would be nice. Another thing is, owing to the fact that my poem, Coronavirus Short Story, was published previously, I think it important that we write in the acknowledgement section that it appeared in Literature Today, Volume 2, and that was in 2020. So it was previously published, and I love the cover on this. If you can't see it, it's Mona Lisa wearing a mask. That's wonderful. So anyhow, let me first of all say that one of the ways I treat terrible things in life is I try to see some sort of a humorous connection. We can either cry or we can laugh. And my preference is to laugh, although I've cried many times. But I wrote a series of simple couplets in rhyme regarding the CDC's requirements that they have placed upon us. And in all respect, but also I had a lot of fun with this. This particular couplet is called Vikings. Crazed Vikings pound their savage ships all the way to Ireland's wild shore. But here I stay in place, wash my hands, and listen to my partner snore. And then another one. Those of you who have gone to various stores and found out that everybody is really putting away all the stuff that you might need and you can't find any. First, TP and hand sanitizer, then meat and milk and canned goods. Why do I think I might be the next thing to vanish off the shelf? Well, anyhow, the poem that found its way into the book is called Novel Virus. Being an English major and an English teacher, it struck me as odd that a virus would be described with a literary term. Well, of course, novel means new. So playing off the word novel as perhaps a book, I came up with this short little poem. Why use a literary term to describe a virus when the adjective new would do? A novel is at least 100 pages, filled with life and love, romance and glory. This is just invisible rats ravaging our breath. Instead, let's call it coronavirus short story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your wonderful poems and your wonderful reading of your poems. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Louis, who's going to see if we have any questions or comments from people who are watching.
Well, thank you, Elayne, and thank you everyone for reading. As Elayne noted, we've done several of these, and each time it comes up something that Elayne had pointed out, that it's so different to hear the poems. There's something meaningful in reading them, and a new layer of meaning in hearing them read. So thank you for that. We don't have any questions online at this point, but there was a number of people that were thinking and giving some shout outs for some of the poems, but would like to invite all of the contributors, if you want to unmute at this point, and we'll just open it up for some discussion on what you see, the kind of the value in this book and what it has meant to you.
Can I start just in another direction? I think that's a really good question, but as I sit here, I'm thinking, Elayne, you have a new charge. I mean, I think this whole upcoming period is going to be very weird. I mean, I think all of us feel sort of weird coming out of this, and this next year is almost going to be worth another anthology. So I just want to say that.
I'm just going to tell you right now, somebody else can do that one.
Mandy,
okay, that was a good idea.
Yeah.
No, but I appreciate, if you're back to the question, I mean, I think I really appreciate, I mean, I think we all do this, we're just trying to make sense of the experiences, and then to hear others put together and to come together in reading, I find it really very moving for me.
I think Sandy's right about this year coming up, because for all of its travails, 2020 was a pretty clear-cut decision as to how to take care and try to avoid the virus. We're coming into a very smudgy gray area right now, where people are vastly divergent in their approaches to the safety measures that they're taking in public.
And I'd add to that we do face another potential really serious threat, which is Delta and other mutations. And this idea of people not wanting to get vaccinated is pretty scary. So I mean, I don't think this is over by a long shot, because viruses mutate all the time. But the bad viruses have been mutating in very bad ways. So I'm really hoping that we don't. I mean, there's already talk about remasking and being careful about crowds and stuff like that. And there's always going to be a proportion of people who just absolutely will not get the vaccination. And so I hope we're out of the woods, but I wouldn't put my money on it yet.
If I might make a suggestion, despite the weirdness and the unvaccinated people and the Delta, the Alpha, Beta, whatever virus that's coming up, it helps to get away. It helps to go, if you can, to a park, whether it be a regional park or a city park or a national park, because you can get away. Certainly in Yosemite, where you have a park the size of Rhode Island, you don't have to worry about being within 6 feet of people. And there's nothing quite like going out into the natural world, into the forest, enjoying its peace and its silence, and kind of coming to terms with yourself and actually letting nature work on you, remove your anxiety, and let nature work on you and heal you. And I really believe that's a possibility. And I just might want to throw that out there for those of you who might be thinking of trying to get away from it all for a few days and try to get themselves together a little bit.
Well, I'm going to vote for dog parks. It really carried me through. I mean, you get the silence, you have people, but you can distance from them, and the dogs are great.
Well, I'm going to vote for the ocean. I happen to be back at the same place that I've spent just about every summer of my life. And it's interesting to be here this summer because I spent longer here than I've ever done before. And it felt like I was on retreat from the pandemic. So being back here, it's just interesting to look across the street at the ocean and not feel that calm that I felt last summer. It was a forced isolation. It was what many of you talked about. And there was a certain calm to it that I'm trying to get back to. So it's just
Stephanie, where are you? Where are you on the ocean?
I'm on the South Shore of Boston in a town called Hull. If anybody has heard of it.
Yeah.
And following up on Dan's suggestion about nature, I'd like to hear from Tom Smith, if you're willing. Can you tell us a bit about your book, Writing the Nature Poem?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for the question.
It's good.
It's a short prose book that includes 30 classic and contemporary nature poems from the Western tradition. The subtitle of the book is Writing the Nature Poem as an Act of Survival. And it's really an argument for the Western nature poet. And I have to restrict it to that because I don't know world traditions that well. I'm writing about what I know, but the argument for the Western nature poem as being intrinsically a poem of protest and resistance to the destruction of the natural world since the first industrial revolution. So,
And it's a very good book.
You've read it, huh? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Tom is my mentor.
Thank you.
You know, I just want to say that more and more this last year, I've had such sympathy for people whose means keep them in cities, unable to get out into nature, either through poverty or other circumstances. I live in a small town in Wisconsin. I'm right across the street from a waterfall, and there's a little college here, and I have nature in my backyard every day, and it's very easy for me to avoid feeling imprisoned, but my sympathies are really for the people who are stuck and can't get out of the cities.
I just would like to add to what you're saying. There are two things I've been thinking about. One is that those of us fortunate enough to live in rural places, like I'm in rural Vermont, and that's how everybody I know just made it through. Everybody was, even if you were never a walker or a hiker before, everybody was just doing that, and it was wonderful. And I'll just tell you how rural we are. We have the other day we had a bear and her cub eating out of our bird feeders, and in that same morning we had Bambi and her mom eating breakfast there. So just looking out the window, and taking these walks is really incredible. But the other thing you talk, and I thought all the time, how in the world can you be a woman who's lost her career in a 2-bedroom apartment in New York with a couple of kids and not lose your mind? So I think that the childcare issue around infrastructure is very important. The other thing you touched upon is the issue of poverty. And I worked in international health for many years, public health with an emphasis on public health. And my heart is just breaking. I mean, I worked in really some places all over the place. My heart is just breaking for the people who do not have access to vaccines. They don't have refrigeration. They are maybe 1 or 2%. Well, I think it's something like 1 or 2% of the whole of Africa have been immunized. That's all. So I really, the disparity between the issues that are raised by poverty, let me put it that way, or economic isolation, are profoundly wound up in an experience like this. And I just hope that people are mindful of that, because we are so privileged as Americans.
That's absolutely true, Elayne. I had students from all over the place, who some of whom were lucky enough to live in a situation where they could get out. I had one who was living in the Czech Republic and was enclosed in a small apartment, was just allowed to open the windows, but he was inside for about 8 weeks. And then another one is a coroner, actually, in near LA. And she was sent down to another county further south. And I asked her, well, is it all COVID? And she said, no, the majority of it is suicide. So that whole thing of mental health, is just really devastating, I think, the population.
Well, in one of our local nursing homes over the past year, there have been more deaths due to failure to thrive than to COVID. Failure to thrive. Elders locked up in their rooms and isolated.
No relatives coming, or terrible.
Well,
even the young people, I feel so sorry. My granddaughter was really down in the dumps, and she started medical school last August. And I know something about what that's like to go to medical school. And that's really tough. And then at the same time, she's locked in her room. She's not meeting people, except she goes to these labs. I said, Natalie, it's sort of like you've started medical school and joined a convent all at the same time, and no wonder the stress is there. I mean, I don't know how you put up with that. And these young people whose lives are all, up in the air, and are they going to get to school? Can they make it through? My grandson's dropped out of school because he can't take the online learning. It's so disruptive for young people too.
Yeah, and that's really a year. My son has been home from college this whole year, and as a spring vacation, his freshman year in college, and he was home for over a year. And it's just one that they can't get back, right?
It's lost time in a way. Maybe they learn other things from it. I don't know, but
he said the food was better.
So all of this reflection does bring us back to the purpose and the importance and the meaning of a book like ours. And that's why I do try to make it clear that's, it's not just a reading I'm asking for when we try to set up events. It's a discussion of what this has taught us and what this has made us think about. And, that's very much was a motivation for me to do the book. I was conscious of that from the very beginning.
Well, good for you.
Are you contacting medical schools, Elayne?
I haven't been, because it's about kind of a bottomless pit. But I am trying to promote it. When I talk about who the audiences are, I do talk about, first of all, the age spectrum, because we want to hear from the kids. We should hear from the kids. Nobody gives them a voice. And even emerging adults who are 15 to 24, that nobody gives them a voice, but it's profoundly affecting them. It's, young people who can't date because they can't meet somebody online, it's vast, economically, socially, psychologically, culturally, it's just vast. And so, I think when I try to invite people to get interested in it, I'm specifically mentioning across the age span, across sociocultural and socioeconomic groups, across genders and races and so forth. I mean, we all have gone through this in very specific ways and in very different ways, as well as communal ways. And I think all of that, and this speaks to the issue of the future, is about processing all of that. And these kinds of offerings, literary offerings, help us to do that.
Carol, I just wanted to say that your poem regarding the hantavirus struck a note with me, being in the Sierra Nevada mountains. where it's such a large problem. And I even began to think differently after the 2 years about rattlesnakes, of all things. I had 2 of them under my deck last week. And I began to look at them, and they were beautiful animals, not too closely, but they were beautiful animals. Unfortunately, I had a friend who came and removed them and relocated them for us. He actually captured them, put them in a bag, and took them away. But it seems to me I've never had that problem before. It seems to me that the climate is changing greatly where I live. And I think global warming, I think the snakes love it, is what I think. But the fact that we're not having so many mice is a big plus. Big plus.
Yeah. So let me offer again thanks to everybody for being here, for reading and writing these wonderful poems. And
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any closing words, Louis, from you?
I would just like to thank everyone again. You know, our poetry healing and growth series, one of the ideas behind it is that poetry can be very therapeutic just in of itself. And before there was therapy, there were the arts. And the arts were an essential part of the psychological health and even physical health of people for many thousands of years before we ever had things such as psychotherapy and medications and different things. And if we return to honoring and respecting what poems can do in the realm of healing, I think it would be very good for us individually and societally. So I thank everyone for coming, for reading your poems, for being part of this and being a part of what we at University Professors Press really see as a mission of helping people to heal through art. And a lot of the people who have been drawn to our series so far are identify as expressive arts therapists, and there are other people that are in the mental health field in different ways. So we appreciate you being a part of it. If you're interested in the book, we really encourage you to go to universityprofessorspress.com and purchase your copy there. It is available in ebook format and print through other major retailers, but if you're not familiar, Amazon and these other retailers, they take more of the profits than the editor, Elayne, who worked so hard on this book, and the publishers that help put it out. So if you buy your books direct from the publishers when you can, or small bookstores, it really helps to keep poetry alive and accessible to more people. So we encourage you to try and do that. And we encourage you to follow University Professors Press Facebook page and elsewhere on social media for future events like this. The next book that we probably will have coming out this fall is an anthology on social justice poetry. And we'll probably have another one of these events, and we're hoping each April to have a number of poetry healing and growth events on Facebook Live as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and say goodnight. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, for being here. Please share the link with others that you think may be interested, and have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank all of you.
Namaste.
Yeah.